What's the biggest concern heading into this season for the 76ers?
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now through September the 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial on NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Hi, my name is Keith Pompey, and this is my right-hand man, John Mitchell. We are the co-hosts of Locked On 76ers. Today, we got some things to talk about. Yesterday, we talked about who do we think is going to be the most impactful player, excluding Paul George in regards to free agencies. Well, today, we want to talk about what is the Sixers' biggest concern heading into this season, not associated with Joel Embiid's health. So, Mitch, what are your biggest concerns that you have right now about the 76ers team?
Okay, so when you extract Joel from the equation, I guess my next concern would be PG's health. I think that although he was 70+ games last year, and that's a concern of mine. And I'm also concerned about how long, and I'm not overly concerned about this, Keith, because I think the pieces fit well. But just, when you get in situations of who's going to get the last shot, who's a go-to, I guess that's a good problem to have. At the end of games, who's going to be your guy? I think you can they got 3 guys that are all legitimately capable of getting the last shot. Depending on what they need, they need a 2, do they need a 3? And something we kind of talked about offline, and you have concerns about is, the escalating age of some of the other players on the Sixers roster. That's a concern. But yeah, I think. At the very top, at the very top of my concerns, outside of Joel, because that's the omnipresent concern, is a concern over the durability of Paul George.
Yeah. For me, I guess the one thing that I'll talk about is, and you mentioned it, is the age factor, and when you look at it, and for me, when you look at the 76ers team comparable to the New York Knicks, comparable to the Boston Celtics, they are older. And, you look at Joel, and we're talking about Joel, he's 30, but he has a banged up body. So his body is like, you can argue and say you have to add a couple years to it in regards to NBA life, right? You know what I mean? Shelf life. But when you look at it, we talk about you got Tyrese Maxey, but then you have 2 other point guards who have vital roles, right? One of them is Reggie Jackson, and he's a guy that if the Sixers make the playoffs, at that particular point he's going to be 35 years old. His birthday is April the 16th, right? You're looking at him to be a nice scoring threat, to do all these other things for you, but come off the bench and get you buckets. Now, you have one pure point guard on the team, and that's Kyle Lowry. 6-time All-Star, a 2019 NBA champion, 1-time All-NBA, a gold medal winner. But right now, he's 38 years old. Last year, he was the 7th oldest player in the league. His birthday is March the 25th. So once the playoffs rolls around, he's going to be 39, right?
Wow.
And then you got a guy like Eric Gordon, a
Mm-hmm.
guy who they're looking at to say, hey, we need a guy who can make shots, a guy who could come in. You know, he's a guy that could probably stand in the way of Jared McCain getting minutes, things like that, right? Well, Eric Gordon will be 36 years old on Christmas. So, and then we go down to Paul George, PG. PG had a lot of success. We're talking about 9-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA. He was a steals champion. He was a most improved player one year. He was a 4-time All-Defensive selection. He'll turn 35 on May the 2nd. So while they all have great resumes, there becomes a time where father time catches up to you.
Yeah.
So to me, when you compare them to Boston, you compare them to the New York Knicks, teams who are younger than them, and all these guys that we mentioned are all looked upon to have vital roles, especially if the team is successful. That's just the little concern I have right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it's interesting, you know, the guys that you mentioned, number one, they're all in the backcourt for the most part, you know, with the exception of PG, who you'll probably see in the backcourt, you know, initiating the offense a number of times. And they're all in the rotation. You know, they're all that, you know, those guys you expect to see, you know, as rotational guys during the season. I anticipate that Nick Nurse is going to do a lot of mixing and matching in that backcourt. And when you look at Kyle Lowry at 38, I mean, he's in that LeBron, you know, that LeBron age bracket, and he's not the super freak 6'8", 5% body fat, you know, one of the best of all time, like LeBron. So, yeah, that's a concern. And it also makes you kind of realize, even when you throw PG in there at 34, you know, that, you know, you start thinking about what will this team's window be long range, you know, so that's going to be a question. So you're hoping that these guys can hold up, but you know that they're going to be, you know, they're going to be nights when the gang just won't be together, and age will play a role in it. I'm not overly concerned about it, but obviously that's, you know, we're saying this in August. When January gets here, and you know, we start talking about those conversations, you know, those stories that talk about teams looking for a break at the All-Star. That might be what we're talking about with, you know, with the 76ers. And we can talk about that maybe a little bit more when we get back. But right now, I want to talk to you folks about FanDuel. And you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial on NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time you please. So just visit fanduel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There's no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA. Available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single solitary day.
Do it today, people. Definitely do it today. But yeah, so I mean, Mitch, those are some of the biggest concerns, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, but the one thing that I will say is that the most, you know, if you take Embiid's health out of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
The position that I'm least concerned about is the center spot.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yeah.
you look at Embiid and then you shore that up with Drummond, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
have Drummond, and we talked about him, a multi-time All-Star. He's a backup center now, but he's still regarded you can still make a case for him being one of the 10 best bigs in the league, right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have that going on. So when we ask this question, you say to yourself, what about Adem Bona?
Mm-hmm.
Adem Bona is the center that they drafted this year in the second round, early in the second round. He's athletic. He's an elite rim protector.
Yeah.
There's two negatives about him is lack of size. Now, what I mean by lack of size, because he is cut up and built strong, but he's only around 6'8". He's 6'8". So, and then he doesn't have really good hands, like as far as like catching and all this stuff like that. He's more of a energy athletic guy right now. So then you look at Jabusele, who they picked up, the guy from France. Well, you look at him and you say they're kind of like similar players as far as energy. Now, Bona is a better rim protector. Yabusele is a better shooter, shooting threes and stuff. But you look at it, if you want to go small ball, you may say, okay, I'm going to go with the French guy over Bona, right? So
the French guy.
yeah, Yabusele. Yeah. So my
Peppy.
thing is, huh?
We're going to call him Peppy.
Peppy or Dancing Bear. But I don't even, I'm gonna go there. That's his nickname, the Dancing Bear. But that if you think about it, that's a pretty good nickname. I mean, he got good feet for a big man. But at the same time, it's one of those things where you say to yourself, what does all this mean for Bona?
Yeah.
I mean, is he gonna be a G League All-Star? Like, where's he gonna get his playing time from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he reminds me when I look at him. He's raw, and he reminds me of a player when I first started covering the league. And this is just when you look at him, I'm saying that when you talked about him being cut up, 6'8", round 240. He reminds me of somebody I covered early on in my career in Washington. And again, I'm not making this comparison, but when I see him, I see Ben Wallace, and when Ben, when I was in Washington, Ben was, Virginia Union guy playing behind Chris Webber, playing behind, Jawad Howard, and when he could get minutes, and you look at what he turned into eventually. This guy was Defensive Player of the Year in a different league. A guy with, I think, Adem Bona's reach is like 7'4". He's a guy who can, who can cover, who can jump out on screen and roll, can cover both players. Very, very athletic. Now, having said all that, I'm not comparing him beyond his looks to the career that Ben Wallace had that ultimately wound up in the Hall of Fame. But he has a tool set that's vital in this league. But now, you had him penciled in as perhaps a small ball center, and now you look at your Yabusele as probably that, more so that guy. So I think it's going to be interesting where he is. It's, we could be talking about a long stint in the G League, but you just want him playing because, as you said, he doesn't catch the ball very well. He's raw. He's that guy. It's almost like the NFL training camp, or any training camp. You hear about a guy who's got all these athletic tools, but he's raw. And that's where he is. I do want to see him play though, because I think he had a lot of his skills do translate to the NBA. Now he's not he doesn't shoot free throws well like Ben. I think he probably shoots them better than Ben did. But you can work on that. So yeah, you do look at him as being, the second round pick. and wanting to see him be a part of what they do. But now you question, how far down the pecking order does he fall? And the Yabusele pickup was crucial. Um, and it's better for the team to have him, but it's definitely worse for Adem Bona to have a guy like that with those skills, with that skill set, because it's definitely going to take away from his playing time. And then from his playing time, and then of course, obviously, like you were talking about Drummond. Drummond is the best. He's probably a top 10 big in the league. Sixers were fortunate enough to get him, and it shores up. It really shores up the center position, which even when on those nights when Joel's out. So
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, so we'll see. We'll get a better idea of how it's going to go. But I just feel like that's the biggest thing. I mean, but the thing is, I guess that's a good problem for the 76ers to have. And if we're going to be real, like they really haven't had a lot of second round picks who played a lot during their rookie year. I mean, the one year you had Isaiah Joe, who had spot duty because that was the COVID season or the
right.
second season after the COVID, where they were doing guys had to be tested and all this and that. So he got some burn, but at the same time, he didn't play as much. I mean, look at B-Ball Paul; he didn't play. You know
Right.
what I mean? A lot. So there's sometimes, and this team is older now. They have
Yeah.
more experienced players. So, from so it's going to be tough, especially with Drummond. With Drummond here and all that. So.
Yeah, it's almost like he's a barometer. If you see him playing a lot, that means somebody's hurt.
Yeah,
You
could
know,
be. Yeah.
and
Yeah,
actually, it's a good thing for him, but it's not a good thing for the team, for the organization, for a team that has championship aspirations in 2025. So I mean, that's kind of where you look at it. But I hope he does come along, and I hope I like he's got some things that you really like. I know he averaged like 2 blocks per game in about 20 minutes. In the summer league, obviously some guys in the summer league will not be in the NBA, but you could see the trace. You can see why the athleticism. You can see why they drafted him. But right now, let's break away and talk about something else. And let's talk about what are your self-care non-negotiables. Maybe you never skip leg day, or how about therapy day? When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, why not give BetterHelp a try? It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched up with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. So never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba.
Yeah. So then when we talk about that, he's a guy that's young, that's you're gonna see some things. And and let's face it, um, it's to be determined with Jared McCann how much he's gonna play too,
Yeah.
because of the guys that he has ahead of him. And when you look at a guy like Reggie, now again, he's older, but he can come in and get buckets and he could do certain things.
Mhm.
Kyle Lowry is the only point guard. And McCann, even though that he was a point guard in high school and he moves off the ball at Duke, I mean, I don't expect him to be a point guard on this level right
Right.
now, right? So he's another guy where you have a slew of wings that's going to be ahead of him. So you have, you know, Eric Gordon ahead of him. You're going to have And I know some people saying Caleb Martin is going to be a 2 through 4, but I think they're all going to be interchangeable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to be there. You're going to have Kelly Oubre. You're going to have what's his name? You're going to have Kelly Oubre. You're going to have, of course, Paul George. So I feel like minutes for him are going to be tough to come by. Also, I will also be shocked if KJ Martin received a lot of minutes, right? I mean, now let's face it. The goal is they got him. He's a chip. If it doesn't work out, he's someone that they can trade.
Yeah.
So with that being said, you figure out in order to keep his value up, you have to play him.
You have to play,
Right? So you got to play him. But at the same time, the way I look at it is comparing who did they have Nick Nurse has faith in to play in the postseason. He didn't play him, nor did he play Ricky Council IV in the postseason.
Yeah.
So, my thing is, and when they came in and played, they played well. But my thing is, it's like these are two guys who are going to have to battle for positions. Now, Ricky Council's saying all the great things and all this and how he wants to work hard, and I think that he can play. But then you got to ask yourself, he had a great summer league, but then you got to ask yourself, is he better than Caleb Martin? Is he better than, the other guys that they brought in? So that's the thing. Now, again, he can help the team now. He can. But it's just I feel like they're going to have to battle and prove themselves. Those two guys that I talking about Martin and Ricky Council IV.
Yeah, I mean those guys. I see those guys as kind of like mop up guys. You're gonna see they'll get a lot of mop up minutes. And again, if we go back to the first segment and talk about what's the biggest concern, if there are certain injuries as a result of age, then you'll see more of those guys. I think those guys do give them versatility with their size and their length. And another one of my concerns is going to be perimeter defense. Defending the three, and those guys do bring length. So, and the way I see it, Keith, is that type of athleticism, that type, that it's always good to have competition. It's always good to have, hey, guys looking at each other and saying, hey, I got to get these minutes are precious, and I have to get them as opposed to the next guy. So going back to Jared McCain, who you touched on earlier, I think he's a guy. I mean, we know what he's here for. He struggled from distance during the summer league, but we also know that his reputation. He was drafted because he's a shooter, more so than anything. If he, when he was winning California State Player of the Year in high school, yes, he was he did play point. But again, that's it's just like the whole boys to men. He was playing against a bunch of boys. Now he's in the big time with grown-ups. So we'll see. I wanted to see some point guard ability. I wanted to see him on the ball a little more during the summer, and he didn't look too bad. I don't see him as being very athletic. So that could be a strike against him. But the one thing the 76ers want from him is if he can get out there and he can find his rhythm from long range, I think that will go a long way to getting him playing time. It's just like when his number gets called, you're going to know exactly why it's been called.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, look, y'all, it was a good show. John was out here dropping knowledge. We want you guys. He was trying, huh? We want y'all to go out and have a blessed day, right? Have a blessed week. So what we want you to do is a great weekend. So thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen today. Now go listen to Locked On NBA podcast. Get daily insights on the NBA with this pod. You can find the link to Locked On NBA in the description so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. So for my man Mitch and me, we want to say peace. Have a good one, y'all.
Enjoy your weekend, folks.